My name is Esther. I am a yoga teacher. I'm the author of a book called Bent Back into Shape, Beating Addiction Through Yoga. And I'm a bit shiny. Let me just see if I can move. I'm a bit more shiny there. I guess I'll have to be shiny. So yeah, I'm the author of Bent Back into Shape, Beating Addiction Through Yoga, which is available on Amazon. I wrote that about 2 years ago. And I'm the founder of Balance and Breathe, which is the website I've owned for about 3.5 years now. And also Rhonda Yoga, which is where I teach yoga in the Rhonda, and beginnersyogaclub.com. So I'm trying to work 3 websites at the moment, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you how complicated that can make life. So I'm a single mum. I've got 3 sons. They are, 2 of them are grown up. One is in Seattle at the moment. He's due home in a fortnight, and I'm very excited. And the eldest one is in France. And the littlest one he's just 8. And so he lives with me and goes to his father, which is where he is now. So I've lived in South Wales all my life. I've lived in the Rhondda for most of my life. One day I will get to travel the world, but not today. And it's nice here. It's nice and green, and I love walking up the mountains and going to the coast. So Wales is good if you like doing that. So I'm going to make a start now on what I'm going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to talk about my journey, my story, and I also want to share with you some more practical information, some tips, to give you some tips to help you to beat stress, to beat anxiety, to help you to relax by using your breath. And as you get to know me on my journey, you will get to find out why that is so important to me. So I started drinking, as many people my age did, at about 16. 2 halves of cider was enough for me back then. It would just make me feel nice and confident. I wasn't particularly confident as a child, as a teenager. I didn't like myself very much. I didn't feel comfortable in who I was, didn't really know how to behave, didn't know how to be with other people. And alcohol helped me with this quite a lot. You know, I found that I was able to talk to people. I was able to flirt with boys. I was able to get up and dance. I was able to have fun that I was a little bit too withdrawn to be able to enjoy when I was sober. So I had a lot of issues at the time regarding my self-confidence. Thought I was really ugly, thought I was really boring, nobody liked me, I was very weird, and I just didn't really think anybody liked me, and I didn't like myself very much. At 19, I found myself in going more downhill in terms of the self-esteem stakes. And I found a group of friends who, because they'd gone to a different school, they didn't know me from my school days, they accepted me for who I was at 19 rather than all the school stuff that had come behind me. So they became my tribe very quickly. They accepted me and I loved them, and we had some amazing fun together. But our fun did kind of revolve a little bit around drinking and taking lots of drugs. And I embraced this completely because this helped me. This enabled me to have lots of fun and be wild and kind of let out the part of me that I'd always kept hidden from myself, but the part of me that I kind of wanted to be, the rebel, the bad girl. And I thought it was really fun. I'm a big 60s music fan, big Beatles fan. So taking LSD, smoking marijuana, as far as I was concerned, I was there with the Beatles. So I had this whole weird thing that it was connecting me to my musical heroes. So I was really living the sex, drugs, and rock and roll life. But at 20, my life kind of fell apart. I had a horrible things going on in my life. And my self-esteem just absolutely went down the toilet. I absolutely hated myself. I couldn't bear to look at myself in the mirror anymore. I felt like everyone around me hated me. My mother certainly did go through a bit of that. I made some very bad decisions, and I was in a real mess. With hindsight, I know now that I was actually suffering from pretty serious depression, but nobody saw that because I was because I hid that, because I convinced myself that it was just because I was a bad person and I was a terrible human being and I didn't deserve for life to go well for me. So I hid all my pain and just went out and got drunk and took lots of drugs and did really stupid things that I, you know, if I could talk to my younger self, there's quite a few things I'd like to tell her. And drinking in particular, I mean, I took a lot of drugs, but drinking was my thing. Drinking and marijuana were my thing. Drinking especially, you know, I figured out very early on that if I drank enough, I could forget about all the things that were going wrong in my life, or so I thought. I was constantly in search of that oblivion, that place where I didn't have to feel what I was feeling anymore. I wasn't a daytime drinker. At this point, apart from, you know, if somebody invited me to go to the pub for a lunchtime drink, I'd go. I'd always go. But I wasn't a habitual lunchtime drinker. And so I never even entertained the possibility that I was heading down a dangerous road with my drinking. As far as I was concerned, alcohol was my best friend, and alcohol was helping me. It was really getting me through the difficulties of my life. So were the drugs, so was all the other crazy stuff I was doing. And this became my pattern for 20 years. I would have a catastrophe in my life. I would turn to drink. I would have good things happen in my life, and I would celebrate with wine and cider and drugs. You know, the alcohol was the best friend that was there for every emotion. There was not an emotion in the world that couldn't be enhanced with alcohol. So I thought. And with hindsight now, I can see I was on a really, really hard treadmill, like a hamster wheel, not a treadmill, hamster wheel, where when I was working or when I was in university, I would be up until really late at night drinking because I thought that was helping me to sleep. So I would stay drinking until 2 o'clock in the morning to help me sleep. And then when I had to get up in the morning, I couldn't get up. I was really tired, so I was drinking coffee all day. So insomnia that I suffered with as a result of the depression, and as a result, it's gone on for a long time. But I was exacerbating this. The insomnia was fueling the addiction, and the addiction was fueling the insomnia. And I was really trapped in this total dependence on substances. Caffeine and alcohol and marijuana and cigarettes. They were basically what I was made up of, those 4 things for a very long time. You know, like the stick of rock writing. You know, that was basically my constitution. I remember once when somebody asked me, "How do I look so young?" And at the time, I was a pretty heavy smoker. I was a very heavy drinker, and that was my answer. Was I don't know. It must be all the booze and fags, which is just ridiculous. But it made me laugh. I thought it was funny at the time, but clearly, you know, it wasn't. But this was my mode of coping with any emotion. Was just right. How quickly after this thing has happened can I get drunk? Can I get drunk now? Is it too early to get drunk? I was a single mother in university, and I did most of my degree work drunk or stoned or both. I remember trying once, I had this sort of idea that maybe, you know, most people don't write their essays in a slightly, you know, looking through one eye to see the computer screen. So I tried writing without being intoxicated in any way, and I couldn't do it because I had told myself so much that I needed these substances to get me through my difficulties, to get me through the moments when I couldn't think of what I wanted to write next. I was also convinced, you know, because I was channeling George Harrison. I was pretty convinced that it was actually essential for my creative process. You know, I was writing academic essays. I didn't need my creative process enhanced. But that was the story I told myself. And it was a very strong story that I was telling myself. I really believed it. In 2013, I had the closest actual realization, I think, for really that I'd become an alcoholic. I didn't actually admit it, but I came close to recognizing what was actually going on with me. When my brother died at 30, and it was very unexpected. And for 6 days before he actually died, he was in a coma, and I couldn't deal with this at all. I didn't know, I didn't have, you know, I mean, you can't deal with it anyway, but I had no resilience to deal with this whatsoever that didn't come out of a bottle. But I remember saying to myself, I remember actually having a conversation with myself, you can't start drinking in the day now, because if you start drinking in the day now, you're never coming back from that. And mum doesn't need that. And I remember vividly that moment. That was 13 years ago. And I managed to stop myself from drinking in the day during the week before he actually died, and then the months afterwards. I was an absolute mess. But I didn't allow myself to go down that route. So I had some awareness of what was going on with me, but not enough to actually say, when I went to the doctor to get the sick paper, because I couldn't possibly go back to work because I couldn't last about 10 minutes without crying. I didn't say then, I think I need help with my drinking, because I managed to shut the door on that thought. I couldn't deal with, you know, I didn't need to deal with that when I was trying to deal with my grief. So there may have been a little window there where I may have been able to do something about it, but I just shut it away and didn't want to deal with it, didn't know how to deal with it. After Richard died, that's my brother, after Richard died, I started going for walks. I'd always, you know, I would walk to the pub so I didn't have to drive home again. And that was about the extent of it. But then after Richard died, I started walking for pleasure. And I started to really enjoy going for long, long walks over mountains, as many mountains as I possibly could, as many miles as I possibly could. It became my grief therapy. And I was in full-time work once I'd gone back to work after taking a month off. I was in full-time work, and so obviously I couldn't walk during the days. I could walk in the evening sometimes, but I needed to walk at weekends, which was also drinking time. But I found that I was able to, if I had a walk plan the next day, I would go for a walk on the Saturday, so I would stay sober on the Friday night. So I could get up early, drive off to join the walk, and then I would go home and reward myself with a drink. But that new love of walking, it led me to a connection with my body that I hadn't ever really had before. My body had always in the past been something that I punished. It was too fat, it was too thin, it was too ugly, it was too unattractive, it wasn't sexy enough. It was all these things that were wrong with my body. And I never really connected with my body in any way that was positive. I have a history with eating disorders as well, and you know, that's all connected, but there is an end limit to this conversation. But so, you know, being able to having this positive regard for my body, I started to want to take care of myself. Now, I didn't decide I was going to stop drinking at this point. I didn't want to take care of myself that much. I started eating better, and I started exercising more. I became a little bit obsessed with exercising, I think. Probably too much. I would go swimming during my lunch break at work. I would go for long walks. I would exercise. But it kept me healthier than I was when all I was doing was sitting on my settee drinking wine at night. And as a result of all these exercises that I was doing, yoga came onto my radar. Now, I dabbled with yoga in the past. As I think I've already mentioned, I'm a George Harrison fan, and George Harrison was into yoga, and so when I was younger, I had to try it, and I really liked it, but I never really got into it. But I started going to yoga after I'd had an asthma attack, because despite being asthmatic, I smoked, and it was easier to go to yoga classes to learn to breathe than it was to give up smoking. So I started going to yoga classes. And the first time I went to a yoga class, in this new state of mind of actually feeling like I wanted to take a bit of care of my body, I was also I'm trying to get toned and, you know, trying to feel better about myself through making my body look better. I went with a different mindset of I wanted to learn this, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the way that the postures made my body feel. I loved the fact that I could do it because I'd done gymnastics when I was a teenager. My body was flexible, whether that's because of the gymnastics I did, or maybe I've got a touch of hypermobility. I'm not sure, but I was very flexible for someone that hadn't really ever done any yoga before. And I really loved it. I really loved it. I loved it on a physical level. I loved it because it gave me an hour and a half out of the house where I was just doing this thing that made me feel good. So there was that self-care element to it. And also my ego loved it because I was one of the, you know, I was like, within a couple of months, I was one of the ones that were getting highlighted by the teacher, you know, like, oh, Esther's doing this posture beautifully. And I like that. I like that. It was nice to feel good at something. So I really got into yoga as a physical exercise. Didn't really get that it was anything other than a physical exercise, but I loved it. And I remember just a month or two into going to my classes regularly, thinking, I'm going to teach this one day. I had one teaching qualification at the time. Parents are teachers. I think I'm born to be a teacher. So I knew I was going to be a teacher at some point. Now, the weirdest thing was about my love of yoga, and it was doing me tremendous amounts of good, but I was still very much an alcoholic at this point. Admittedly, I didn't know it, but I very much was. And I was going home from my yoga classes, opening a bottle of wine, rolling a joint, getting cigarettes out, and just generally annihilating myself for the rest of the night. So I was doing this amazing thing that made me feel really good, but it didn't really get to the part of me that needed it most. I struggled with a blocked nose. I got dust allergy as well as asthma. So I really struggled with the blocked nose. So I really struggled with the breathing aspect of it. And I really didn't like the breathing exercises. I found them really hard. And I found that they made me actually feel quite stressed and quite irritable. You know, I'd just be waiting for them to be over so we could get on with the postures. So I didn't actually see there was anything wrong in going to yoga and then going home and getting completely trolleyed before I went to bed. I didn't see the contradiction in that at all. But, you know, with hindsight, it's glaringly obvious that obviously that the way I was approaching yoga then wasn't really working for me. It wasn't doing what I needed. It was doing what I thought I wanted. It was definitely doing what I wanted. It wasn't doing what I needed for me. But you know, it started me on this path. So at this point, I was working. I became a mother again at 37, very unexpectedly, in a relationship that turned sour for me very, very quickly. I had a newborn baby. I had a 13-year-old child, and I had an 18-year-old, and a relationship that was falling apart. And that had actually fallen apart before the baby was born, if I'm honest. And I stopped drinking when I was pregnant. When I found out I was pregnant, I was able to stop drinking completely because even though I still wasn't admitting I was an alcoholic, I knew that I had damaged my body so much that there was a chance that I might have caused harm to my eggs, and so then my baby might be harmed. So I just stopped drinking, stopped smoking immediately. But it was always, I'm doing it for now. It was never, I'm giving up drinking. I never had any intention of getting sober. I was just doing what needed to be done for the time that it needed to be done. And when I went back to drinking after pregnancy and breastfeeding for 6 months, I remember feeling that like return to my love. It was just, it's quite scary to look back at it now, just how much I was in love with that glass of wine that I held. I got very drunk and felt really ill the next day. The relationship that I was in had begun in a pub, had begun because the man fed me alcohol and marijuana and got me very drunk, and until in the end he just wore me down. I didn't really want the relationship, but it happened, and it didn't last very long. It lasted about 1.5 years after the baby was born, and it got very nasty, and it really took a toll on my mental health. So I was drinking more, I was becoming more erratic, I was more stressed, I was completely wired most of the time. And in 2013, I had this vicious breakup going on. I had job insecurities in the organization I was working in. I had a new relationship with an old relationship, but a new relationship. My mum got sick. We found out that somebody else in my family was an alcoholic. So I had all kinds of stuff going on in my head about that. And I had a breakdown. Eventually, I just couldn't cope anymore, and I had a breakdown. So I gave up my job, and then was sort of thinking, right, well, what am I going to do now then? You know, I need to do something. So I decided I was going to train to be a yoga teacher. Now was the perfect time. I really needed it. So looked around, found a yoga teacher training course. And the teacher that was advertising it, she'd only just started advertising it at the time that I started looking. And we have discussed, we've tried to pinpoint to see, just we think it's like almost like the stars aligned at exactly the moment I needed it. It was there, beautiful. So I started this in April 2014. And walking into this yoga studio that I'd never been in before, I didn't know it existed until I turned up there that day. I felt like walking into, it was dark and it was cozy, and I remember thinking it's like a womb. Not that I can remember being in a womb, but that was the feeling that it gave me, and it felt like returning somewhere I had been before. It felt like returning home. And I went into this yoga teacher training full of cockiness that I knew yoga. I knew everything there was to know about yoga, and I just needed the certificate. I didn't need to be taught anything. But within about, 2 hours of the first class, I realized I knew nothing at all about yoga. And actually, this course was going to change my life. I didn't realize I was going to end up sober as a result, but I knew it was going to be something special. I had to learn to breathe. So I was advised to give up dairy to help with the mucus and the blocked nose, which I did. And it just freed up my nose. I now hardly ever get dust allergy problems. And I'm able to breathe through my nose, which meant I was able to do the breathing exercises properly. And that's where the magic came. There was lots of other things as well. But I really think, for me as an asthmatic, a smoker, someone who had a dust allergy, being able to breathe properly for the first time in my life was life-changing. It really was. When I learned to breathe, I was suddenly able to, instead of flying off the handle when something happened, I was able to do that old wives' tale thing of take a deep breath, count to 10, and it works. It really works. I noticed that I wasn't getting angry with my ex. I wasn't getting so angry with the kids. I was sleeping well at night. I was able to get up early in the morning. I was able to relax. I was able to actually calm myself down when I was getting agitated and just relax properly rather than needing to reach for a cigarette or reach for a joint or reach for a glass of wine. I was just able to calm myself. I had never had a tool like that before. I had never had any way before of actually calming myself down that felt good. I used to be a nail biter. That was my first thing. I've always looked for external ways to calm my nerves. But then I realized that I actually had it in here. I have it in my lungs, and I can turn that on whenever I need it. So as I learned to breathe better, my general kind of demeanor was becoming a lot calmer. I know I'm still quite excitable when I talk. I don't ever want that to change. But my moods are calmer. I am quite a bouncy kind of person, but my moods, whereas they used to be like, where's the camera, like that, now I'm kind of like that most of the time, and I don't have those peaks and troughs that suggested I probably needed mental health services at some point. So yeah, learning to breathe was absolutely fundamental. I learned lots and lots and lots of other stuff as well during my teacher training, and I would never try and say that any of those weren't important, because there is so many levels to yoga. There are so many depths to it. It is so much more than what you can, whether you can touch your toes, whether you can lift your arms straight up over your head. There is so much more than what you do with the body in a yoga class. yoga is a way of life. It is a way of looking at the world. It is a way of looking at yourself. It's about how you relate to yourself. It's about how you relate to other people. It's about how you relate to the world at large. And that was, of course, one of my biggest problems, was I couldn't relate to myself. I couldn't relate to other people unless I was drunk. And I couldn't really relate to the world at large because I didn't really understand my place in it. And yoga helped me to find that. It helped me to find my spiritual side. I didn't know I had a spiritual side. And it gave me a language to speak about that and to be comfortable with talking about that. It helped me to let go of a lot of the past and a lot of the pain and the resentment and the anger and the hurt and the regret and the shame. I let go of so much. There's still more, you know, it's always a work in progress, isn't there? We're always learning, always evolving, but I have yoga to help me to do this. So I've been sober since the 12th of October. The 12th of October 2014, I woke up with the worst hangover I've ever had in my entire life. It was horrendous. And I lay on the sofa, completely unable to do anything, couldn't move. I could barely get up and go to the toilet. I was that bad. And I just lay there thinking, why the hell am I doing this to myself? What am I gaining? By this point, I had resources to help me with my stress, with sleeping. I had that. I had yoga. I didn't need alcohol anymore. I didn't need it the way I used to need it. So I decided I wasn't gonna drink the following weekend. I was gonna take a week off and I was gonna see how I felt. I had cut down my drinking by this point because I was doing my yoga practice through the week, and then I was kind of like massively binge drinking at the weekends. Hi Karen. So I decided I'd take a week off. And then that weekend came and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed going to bed on a Saturday night, knowing that I was going to remember getting up in the morning. I went to bed early. I went to bed when I was tired instead of when I'd run out of wine. Getting up in the morning, being up before the children, being able to do things. And I just carried on doing that week by week by week, and just really focusing, not on I'm not drinking tonight, but on I'm still sober. And I feel really good this morning. And yeah, I can remember going to bed last night and, you know, focusing on the gratitude, focusing on the positives of what I was doing rather than on what I felt like I was missing out on. And at no point did I actually feel like I was missing out, probably because I was doing that so much. So then eventually that week by week by week changed when I went to my brother's wedding and I opted to drink elderflower cordial all night, fizzy elderflower cordial. It was amazing. I had such a lovely time at the wedding. And the next day there was no sense of shame. There was no fear that I'd made a fool of myself, that I'd embarrassed my brother, that my mother was angry with me. None of that. I remembered it all. I'd had a fantastic time and I'd been able to look after my son, which was really important. And I felt so good. And I just thought in that day, I knew then that like this is the life I'm choosing now. And even then, I didn't think of it as giving up. I was choosing a different life. I was choosing a life where I could wake up in the morning and feel good and feel proud of myself, rather than when I lay in bed trying desperately to piece together what happened, how did I get into bed, why am I still wearing my boots, and that kind of thing. So I've been sober ever since, and there have been times when I've been really stressed. I don't have an easy life. I have yoga, and I need yoga. You know, I really need my coping strategies because life is still very much. I think I will always be one of these people that just like I'm like a magnet for chaos and stress. But I can deal with it, and that's the fundamental thing, because you know, it's that you know, it's that thing of you can't control what the world's going to throw your way, but you control how you deal with it. And I deal with it primarily through now being really conscious of my breath. When I get stressed, when I get upset, my first thing is, how's my breathing? What am I doing? How are my lungs feeling? How are my emotions feeling? How is that affecting my breathing? And so I would like to, there's loads, I've written like 2 pages of notes here, but I'm really conscious that I'm probably going on a bit. I would really like to talk you through doing just 2, I've listed 6, 6 different exercises I was going to show you, but I don't think I've got time. I wanted to show you a couple of ways that you can work with your breath to help you in those moments where you get anxious, when you get stressed, or if you can't sleep. I've also got a bonus pack for you. If you want to subscribe, you can get access to a bonus pack, which is going to give you some more information, some goodies as well. So I'll pop that link in the comments, and when I edit the video later, I'll put it into the comment at the top of the video as well, so you've got that. So but I wanted to just talk you through, first of all, the first thing that I do at the start of every yoga class I teach is what we call, in the tradition that I've been trained in, we call it quiet sitting. You might know it as meditation. It's just quiet, focusing on the breath, and it's very powerful. It's just quiet. It's about getting quiet and about getting still and about getting inward into yourself. It's not guided meditation. It's not guided relaxation. It's just focusing on your breath. So I'll just do a minute of it. I mean, you can do this for as long as you like. If you could do it for 5 minutes a day, you're going to see a big change in how you feel. So we do it. We clasp the hands into the clasp the hands together. So the right hand is dominant over the left, and drop your hand into your lap. And you sit up straight with your neck, your back straight, your head erect, your neck nice and tall, so you've got a nice gap between your neck and your shoulders and your ears. And close your eyes and just bring your awareness to your breath, stopping to notice the flow of the breath. There's a really good chance, unless you've done anything physical, or you've got out of breath, or you've got an asthma attack, if you've coughed, there's a really good chance you haven't noticed your breath today. But it's one of the absolute fundamental things we do. So just notice your breath. Just keep your mind focused on your breath at all times. And your mind will wander. It's not about emptying the mind, it's about controlling the mind. So your mind will wander. Just bring it back to the breath when it does. Try and slow the breath down. Deepen the breath. You feel your abdomen expand as you breathe in. And feel it contract as you breathe out. Slowing and deepening the breath helps to relax the body and the mind. And keep the mind still and focused. So just sit for a minute in quiet, remembering to bring your mind back to the breath when it wanders. And then open your eyes. Just come back into your room, back to the moment. And that is a really powerful, calming thing to do. I feel a lot calmer now. I should have probably done it before I started. It really helps to just take your focus away from any stress, any anxiety, any worry you've got. It helps to bring you back into the moment, into the present moment, where there's no worry, there's no fear, there's no anxiety. In the present moment, actually the only thing you've got is just your breath. Just focus on your breath And you can just get that space, get that moment of clarity, get that, your nervous system can calm down and just come down into the rest and digest phase of the nervous system instead of being up there in flight or fight where you're really stressed and ready to take on the world. And it can just give you that moment, just that space to think, actually, I'm going to respond differently to this situation. Or, you know, maybe it's like, I'm going to switch my phone off, stop arguing with the ex, which is one of my things, and just go for a walk then, because that's going to help you to calm down. But it can just take you out of the heat of the moment and just help to bring you into a place where you can be your friend to yourself instead of letting your emotions get the better of you. I'm trying to work out, I've got a list. I think there's another thing I'm going to show you is a very simple pranayama practice. Now, pranayama is breath control. It's the fourth limb of the 8 limbs of yoga, and it's basically the part that I love the most. Pranayama is wonderful. So the first pranayama that we learned and that anybody would be taught is called Sukha Pranayama. Sukha means easy, and it's easy breath. So it's just a 6-second count breath. If you can't do 6 seconds, which if you've never done pranayama before, you probably won't be able to. If you're a smoker, you almost certainly won't be able to. If you've got any kind of respiratory problem, you won't be able to. And so don't try to, because I can tell you from personal experience, if you try and push your lungs to take in more air than they are capable of, you can actually hurt yourself. I pulled a muscle or something when I was doing my training, trying to be too clever. But you do this. Sukha Pranayama is just slow, deep, rhythmic breath. And it's a similar thing to what we just did. If we were doing that for a longer period of time, I would actually talk you into Sukha Pranayama. But again, if you want to join me, bring your fingers together. You don't have to have your eyes closed if you don't want to. I do. I prefer to feel much more comfortable. You don't have to if you don't want to. Just try and like lower your gaze so you're not focusing on the screen. You're not staring at me as you're doing it. And this time we're going to try and do the breaths even. So I'm going to be counting a 6-second breath. If you can't do 6 seconds, try 4 and try and keep the inhalation and the exhalation to 4 seconds. Really work with what's best for your body, what feels most comfortable for you, and don't hurt yourself and don't push yourself. So we'll just do 3 rounds. So breathe out. Now breathe in. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then open your eyes, give your hands a little shake, and just release any tension in the shoulders. So that's Sukha Pranayama. And that is, I mean, if you were coming to, for example, my yoga class as a beginner, we wouldn't really progress much more beyond that. So although I've got lots of other things that I would have loved to show you, it's probably best that we stop there. I've got some videos which, as I mentioned at this earlier on, I've prepared a bonus pack for you, and I've lost the link for it now. But I've prepared a bonus pack for you which you can sign up to. And in that, I will also add some videos of the practices that I wanted to show you tonight, so you can refer to them at a time that suits you. So I'm just going to drop that link into the comments here now. So if you want that, there is quite a lot in there already. There's an ebook, an an excerpt of my book. So there's about the first 4 chapters of my book. There's an ebook with 10 simple tips to help you in your recovery. There's a video workshop of sharing different ways to beat stress with the breath. And there's a month's free access also to my Beginners Yoga Club, which is an online yoga studio, which I'm just launching. So I'm not going to do I'm going to try and sell it to you now. But there's all that inside the bonus pack. I will also add in a few other videos of some other practices that I know are really good for helping you to sleep, for helping you if you are feeling really stressed and you're just like ready to punch walls. One that's really, really good for that, and some that are just really good for chilling you out, for helping you to relax. So I will share those in the bonus pack for you as well. There's absolutely loads more that I wanted to talk to you about. I could talk about this for hours. I really could. The main thing that I was told to make this at about 45 minutes, so I'm going to stop very soon. If you take away any lessons from this, I would love to really share with you that yoga isn't about being flexible. You don't have to be flexible to be able to do yoga. You don't have to be able to do yoga in order to go to classes to try and do it. That's one of the biggest problems I see. People who really need yoga, who would really benefit from yoga, think that it's not available for them because they can't already do it. So if you feel like you would benefit from yoga, then please try it, because you probably would benefit from it. I think everyone would. If you want to find a yoga teacher to help you from a stress management perspective, try and find one that works with the breath. Not all yoga teachers bring the breath in to their practices, to their classes. Find somebody that really emphasizes working with the breath, because that is where you get an awful lot of the calming effects of yoga. It comes from working with your breath, comes from enhancing the lung capacity, enhancing your control of the breath, and just the breath is just so powerful to help you to calm yourself down. And also, yoga can do so much for you. It can help you if sleeplessness is one of the problems that you have, and that is, like it was for me, one of the reasons that you drink. Going to a yoga class will help you to relax far better. It helps to increase your resilience to stress. It will give you coping strategies. It will give you ways to deal with the things that stress you out, that make you feel like you need that glass of wine. And it can also give you a better sense of who you are. And from what I can make out, addiction is a big addiction and self-worth are kind of very closely interlinked. It's a way of removing ourselves from ourselves if we don't like what we have to live with. So helping to improve your self-esteem, your connection with yourself, your sense of self-worth, and your connection to your spiritual side. Because we all have a spiritual side. It's not about religion. It's about the fact that you are a human being with a spiritual dimension. And I'm not a religious person, but I am I know I have a spiritual dimension. I know we all do, and I think if you can connect that, even if it's on a very small level, it's going to help you an awful lot in your life to find happiness, because we are meant to be connected to our spiritual side.